Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a pretty incredible story about how a single, everyday observation from one patient sitting in a hospital bed literally challenged established medical practices. It sparked this whole international clinical conversation, and it really forces us to rethink where true innovation actually comes from. So let's just dive right in. I want you to picture this for a second. Imagine that really visceral, almost totally helpless feeling of lying in a hospital bed, and you're just completely tethered to the wall by this web of wires and tubes. You just want to shift your weight or maybe sit up or take a tiny walk to help your body recover. But the physical setup of all this life-saving equipment makes literally every movement feel like some impossible puzzle. It's that awful feeling of being totally boxed in by the exact things that are supposed to be healing you. So back in 2008, a patient named Uri Kartoun was dealing with exactly this. He was in the hospital, experiencing that incredibly restrictive, universal patient experience. But while most of us might just kind of grit our teeth and accept it as just part of being sick, Kartoun noticed this tiny, almost invisible bedside detail. He zeroed in on a micro problem in his setup that just felt, well, entirely unnecessarily restrictive. To really get why this matters, we need a quick look at what he was actually dealing with medically. Kartoun had a spontaneous pneumothorax, basically a collapsed lung. Now, fixing this usually requires a procedure called VATS, or video-assisted thoracoscopic surgery. And during recovery, the clinical staff typically hooks you up to two main things: an IV line to keep you hydrated, and a chest tube to help the lung heal. It all boils down to geometry. In the standard setup, they might put the IV on, say, your right hand, and the chest tube on the opposite side of your chest. Well, Kartoun realized this essentially pins your arms across your body, like a seatbelt you can't take off. His idea was brilliantly simple. Why not just mount both devices on the exact same side? Keep the other side totally free for movement. Kartoun really hit the nail on the head when describing the impact of this. He pointed out that when you put these devices on opposite sides, the patient's mobility becomes severely limited. Pain can shoot up, and it gets so much harder to just get out of bed and walk. Think about it. This seemingly trivial, overlooked workflow detail was having a massive, direct impact on his dignity and his physical ability to bounce back. Now, normally, this is where the story just kind of ends, right? The patient gets better, goes home, and totally forgets about the annoyance. But not here. This is the big turning point. Kartoun decided he wasn't going to just accept the status quo. Instead of shrugging it off, he stepped up to advocate for a systemic fix, just to make sure the next person with a collapsed lung wouldn't have to feel as trapped as he did. You're probably wondering, who is this guy? Well, Uri Kartoun is definitely not your average patient. He actually has a PhD in intelligent systems and robotics. He's a former IBM research staff scientist. And get this, he's a co-inventor on more than 85 patent applications. No way, right? So he naturally took that inventor's analytical brain and applied it straight to his own medical hurdle. He knew exactly how to look at a mess, structure the problem, and pitch a totally logical fix. And he actually pulled it off. Kartoun completely blurred the line between being a patient sitting in a gown and being a medical researcher. He took his lived experience and turned it into a formal clinical practice improvement proposal, which actually got published in the European Respiratory Journal. He directly challenged guideline writers to make this one simple bedside swap. He basically took a personal frustration and forged it into actionable medical science. So, what happens when a patient suddenly tells the medical establishment how to organize their hospital rooms? You'd think they'd just brush him off, right? Well, actually, they took it incredibly seriously. Specifically, Dr. Jose M. Porcel, who is this big expert in plural medicine from Spain, read the proposal and decided to dig into it. And what Dr. Porcel found was honestly super surprising. It sparked this genuinely fascinating academic exchange, a direct back and forth between a patient and a top medical expert. Dr. Porcel went straight to the official clinical guidelines to see, what do the rules actually say about the best side for an IV during this procedure? And he found out that the information was, to use his exact words, deceptively scarce. The gap in the guidelines was wild. Dr. Porcel pointed out that doctors usually brush this off as a minor or futile issue, which is a huge contrast to how horrible it feels for the patient. But worse, the actual medical literature was completely contradicting itself. The British Thoracic Society said, put the IV on the same side, but a major British textbook on the exact same procedure said, no, put it on the opposite side. To finally settle the debate, Dr. Porcel sent out a survey to 10 internationally renowned experts in the field. And the results are kind of hilarious. There is absolutely zero consensus. 6 of them said same side, 2 said opposite side, and 2 basically shrugged and said it doesn't really matter. One patient asking a very simple question completely exposed a massive blind spot in expert knowledge. So why are all these experts disagreeing? It really boils down to this underlying friction between clinician workflow and patient comfort. Dr. Porcel noted that putting things on opposite sides is sometimes just way easier for the anesthesiologist, who needs fast access to the IV. But putting them on the same side is a game changer for the patient's ability to actually get up and walk around later. It's the ultimate tug of war between provider convenience and the patient's lived reality. Dr. Porcel actually wrapped up his response with this incredibly validating quote. He wrote, "Some apparently trivial aspects of clinical practice may need to be more clearly addressed." Boom. He fully acknowledged that as medicine tries to focus more on actual patient outcomes, doctors absolutely have to start sweating these small micro-problems. The medical establishment completely validated Kartoun's intervention. Zooming out for a second, away from just IVs and chest tubes, there is a much bigger philosophy at play here. It's about how healthcare systems define who an expert actually is. Kartoun's story proves that patients aren't just these passive things that receive care. The things they experience day in and day out hold this massive, totally untapped potential for real systemic innovation. And Kartoun is super passionate about passing this exact philosophy along. Just recently, in July 2024, he actually gave a presentation to a group of interns at IBM to share this whole journey. He wanted to show them that innovation isn't just about million-dollar lab breakthroughs. Sometimes it literally just starts by paying close attention to a human problem everyone else is ignoring. He proved that simply being a patient can be a source of invention. What's awesome is that he basically built a repeatable blueprint out of this. We can call it the patient-to-clinical improvement pathway. Step 1. Notice a frustrating detail in your own experience. Step 2. Identify how it represents a real gap in care. Step 3. Put it out there as a proposal or a serious question. And 4, push for better design. It shows that absolutely anyone can turn a personal observation into real-world advocacy. Ultimately, what this explainer is really about is totally redefining what we count as valuable healthcare data. A patient's comfort, their ability to just stand up, their basic daily dignity, those aren't just nice-to-haves. They are absolute primary measures of healthcare quality. Kartoun's work loudly insists that doctors have to listen to the lived experiences of their patients and treat that feedback as pure gold for improving care. So I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative thought. We've just seen how one single patient speaking up about a tiny detail next to his bed started a global medical conversation and proved the experts didn't have all the answers. If one voice can do all that, is modern medicine missing its absolute most powerful source of innovation? You? Seriously, think about your own experiences next time you're navigating the healthcare system. Your observations matter, and they might just be the exact spark needed to change medicine for the better. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.